You have found what lights you up. I'm your host, Sunny the Life Coach, and I'm here because I see you searching for something or someone out there to help you feel better. Something to take away the pain that you're feeling, the inadequacies. I know all of the things that happen in life can leave you feeling empty. Your search is over. This podcast is all about finding your own freedom and power to love yourself enough to shine in the ways you were always meant to, the ways in which you are already fully capable of. If you're ready for some real talk, some serious truth bombs, and a few F-bombs, you are in the right place. Let's do this. Let's get lit. Hello, and welcome to episode 3. How's your movie? I'm excited about this one, and it's actually the 4th recording, but I gave you a little bonus earlier in the week, didn't I? I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed putting that out there in a kind of a random sequence, if you will. And happy Thursday, or whatever day of the week, whatever month or year it is that you're listening. I intend to do this for a long time. I love it as much as I thought I would. I hope you did catch the bonus, and new episodes will appear on Thursdays going forward. I didn't actually plan that. It just kind of happened. It's one of those things that Bob Ross used to call a happy little accident, but I'm going to go with it. I had just played around with how the publishing works, and it appeared on Thursday, and my first episode was out there. And so, hey, we're just going to go with it. Also, before moving forward with today's topic, I want to touch on social media. It seems, at least to me, that I mention it a little often. And I want to be clear that I don't spend my days scrolling. However, I do use it. I try to post daily. That doesn't always work out to reach more people and let them know what I'm about and who I am and the work I do, my message, those type of things. So I try to do that, but in real life, I do make every effort to schedule the time that I spend there, and that means that I limit it. During this time of pandemic, however, I am, in fact, devoting a bit more time than I normally would. I'm curious to see how people are coping and interacting. And it seems to be a lot of it is there right now. It seems to be our only source of community, or a common source of community. So I do check it out a little more often than I normally would. And of course, media posts are not reality, but they are a snapshot of a moment in time, and many of us air frustrations there. So it's a solid venue for a life coach, just checking in with behaviors. Hey, what's going on out there? What are people thinking? What are they saying? What are they doing? So just wanted to throw that out there, that when I do talk about what I've seen on social media and checking in on social media, I don't want you to get the impression that I'm just constantly on there, because at some point I'm going to have another episode that is going to be dedicated to that behavior and using it as an escape and that type of thing. So anyway, that said, let's get to your movie. Let's talk about that. I have a dear friend whom I used to work closely with on a daily basis, very close. And she has been one of my greatest teachers in life, even though we don't work together anymore, don't see one another as much. We're even in different states now, but we'll always honor that about her, about what she has taught me and what she continues to teach me, because I can reflect back on a lot of these experiences and learn so much. And one thing that this friend used to say often was, "How's your movie?" Now, the first time I heard her say this, for some reason, I knew exactly what she meant by it. I suppose we just had that kind of connection on the same wavelength, so to speak. Also, almost everyone that worked on our team seemed to understand it too. At least I never heard anyone ask for an explanation. So maybe it's just who she is or the type of relationships and bonds that she formed with most people that we worked as a team. They realized what she meant by saying, "How's your movie?" Because I've asked other people that question since, like in recent years, and they look at me like I have two heads. Another one of her favorite phrases. They look at me with this confusion, and they ask me to explain, which may be what you're doing now. So I'll explain it for you. All day, every day, each of us are living in our own movie. We, of course, are playing the leading role in a drama, a comedy, a romance, maybe a little combination with a rom-com, an action, adventure, a tragedy, a total clusterfuck. Pick your genre. Some of us play out a few different genres per day. It's our own little version of a Netflix binge. Think about what some of the key elements are that make a good movie. Of course, there is you, the star, the headliner, the heroine or the hero. You have your supporting cast. That is a must. Few can carry off a good movie solo. We are not all Tom Hanks Castaway performance worthy actors in our lives now, are we? So we got to have that supporting cast. You have to have good writers, a good script. You have the director that yells action, and everyone takes their places and they get to the work of creating this movie. You have producers and costume designers and sound techs, special effects, all of the stuff behind the scenes that make it a good show, right? Now, imagine that you are fulfilling all of these roles in your mind, all of the time, every minute of the day. You think, wait a minute, this isn't how I wrote the script. No, damn it, the supporting actor is supposed to say this. My vision was that the audience would applaud my performance. This part is boring as fuck. Can we just jump to the next scene? I mean, you're in your own movie. Only the action that you're taking is not just because the director said it was time to do so, or because it was written in the script. The action that you're taking is directly tied to the feelings that you have generated from your thoughts. Yes, I'm building on the previous episodes. We have already talked about how thoughts create your feelings. Guess where the action comes from? All of the action we take is driven by our emotions. So let's remember that. This is good. This is where it all comes together. This is where I explain how your movie plays out the way that it does. And don't forget, we have a circumstance that is completely neutral. It just is. It doesn't mean anything. Everyone can have the same circumstance. Everyone can agree as to what it is. The part where we start breaking off into our own genre is when we start having thoughts about the circumstance. Those thoughts create the emotion inside of us. We can even assign a physical sensation to describe it. Sometimes you can't even come up with the word, but you can think of the sensation. Say, knots in your stomach, or even a bit of nausea to describe what nervous feels like. Then we do something as a response to that emotion. Sometimes we do nothing as a response to an emotion, like if we're afraid, because in our script this may happen and it's scary to think about, so doing nothing feels safer, right? And finally, we get the results that we get from the actions that we've taken. So let's say you get in a car accident. That is your result. Why did you get in the car accident? Because you were driving recklessly. You were doing that because you were feeling an emotion, perhaps a little panic at the thought that you were going to be late for the event, the meeting, the whatever the circumstance was. I just worked backwards from that. Now, The result is where we arrive at the final act of this particular scene, right? The scene of a car accident, for example, that is your result. That's the final act of that scene. We're going to cut to something else on the next scene. This is how that one ends. What's the next scene going to look like? That's up to you. It's your movie after all. Now I'm going to introduce the model, and that's part of the title of this podcast is How's Your Movie? Introduction to the Model. And the model is exactly what I have just been telling you. So if you happen to be somewhere where you can take notes and you can write this down, it would be great if you happen to be out and about on a walk or on a drive and you're listening to this as you're doing something else. Of course, don't do that, but hear this and maybe come back to it later and take some notes. The model looks like this. First, you have the circumstance. Write it down. The circumstance is neutral. It means nothing. And 10 people would agree on what that circumstance is. Then you have your thought. That is your T. And we refer to the model in acronym form. So get ready for that. So C for circumstance. T is your thought. The thought that you have about the circumstance that is completely neutral. Then you have your feeling, your F for feeling. Then you take an action, and then you have a result. Your action is whatever it is you do or don't do based on how you're feeling, and then you get that result. You can plug anything into this model at any point in time. You can actually see where your results in life are coming from, because this movie that we're talking about is indeed your life. So let's play one out for fun. Let's call it a hypothetical scenario. This is a potential movie scene. Okay? Circumstance. The C is maybe going for a walk with the kid, says, I'm bored, I want to go home, like 17 times. Okay? That's the circumstance. Kid says bored 17 times. I'm bored, I'm bored, I'm bored, I'm bored, I'm bored. Now you may have thoughts and feelings about this, but that is simply the circumstance and it is neutral. Until maybe you have the thought, he's making me miserable. And the feeling is probably anger. The action that you might take would be to lash out or sulk or both. You can take more than one action. And the result is, honestly, you make yourself miserable. Why? Because you spun out and didn't honor the time together. You ended up being the disrespectful one, holding on to anger for hours, perhaps, hypothetically. We also refer to this as an exact match between the T and the R line. The T is your thought, the R is the result. So I will repeat that. The thought was, he's making me miserable. The result is, you make yourself miserable. Because you honestly do. You do it with your thought, you do it with your actions, your feelings, all of that. You are the one that actually makes yourself miserable. Now, this is a pretty boring movie. You probably want to fast forward. But in my mind, it just might be high drama. It's my movie. I'm on the edge of my seat wondering how it's going to play out. Let's try another one. Let's try something a little bit more interesting. Say you have been expecting a promotion, and by expecting a promotion, you have had lengthy conversations with your manager. You know exactly the things that you need to do in order to move up to the next level. You've done all of those things. You've checked all of the boxes, and you've done this over months. You know, maybe it was on your last performance evaluation, and that was your goal for your 6-month goal was to move to the next level and get that promotion. You've been talking about it almost daily for a long time, and the day finally comes, and it doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. And the circumstance in this scenario, in this movie scene, is no promotion. That doesn't mean one thing or another until I have the thought, I must not be good enough. My work must not have been good enough. That means I must not have been good enough, right? A feeling that comes from that is dejected. I didn't want to go with disappointment on this one because painting that scene, I felt like maybe disappointment wasn't deep enough to convey the emotion that would come from I'm not good enough, I'm not enough. Feeling is dejected. And action is to have a drink or several. Results? Feel like shit the next day. Also, prove your own low self-worth. You prove the thought, I must not be good enough, by continuing to perpetuate this cycle. You think you're not worthy, so you subconsciously take action that further proves that thought. You can find yourself stuck in this cycle, rinse and repeat for years. Now, drinking, it's very tricky. And no, I've talked about this, and no, I've touched on it, and I've said that I'm really going to dig into it, and I will. But actually, any activity that we use to numb our emotions, could be food, binge watching TV, checking out for hours on end on social media. All of those things are really avoiding our emotions, and we're trying to numb them away. And that's a whole course in itself, because there's a lot that goes on in our brains that drive our behaviors. And when you have all of the elements, you can start to rewrite your script and get to the work of rehearsing your lines to unlearn the habits you've created over time. This is very powerful work, and it requires more than just a podcast. But I will continue to give as much as I can give on this level, and then you can decide when you want to go deeper into a particular element. We can work one-on-one, that type of thing. The point is that any activity or substance that we use to numb our feelings is simply because we don't want to feel discomfort, whatever level of discomfort that is. A dejection is pretty unfreaking comfortable. We don't want to feel the painful parts of our life. It's one thing when it's happening to someone else, one of your supporting actors. It's quite another when you're living it. And we may view something that happened to someone else as unfortunate. Well, that's unfortunate. But it's much higher drama when we are directly impacted. Think about that. By the way, our brains are wired for drama. You can try telling yourself all day that you would like to live a drama-free life, but that's not really true, is it? If that were true, you'd get up and walk out of the theater altogether. Enjoy it. That's why we enjoy the drama genre of movies. We love to see ourselves as the victim, and in order to play that role well, we have to identify someone else as the villain. It is true. Neurologically, the brain loves a story with bad guys and dangerous things. That's where those roles that I've mentioned before come into play. Remember the one where I said the circumstance of someone saying something to you is neutral? I've said it a few times now. Yet it seems so charged when it's your parent, your spouse, your child, your sibling, your boss, your in-law. In-laws are good villains, right? They're the ones by far that we default that villain assignment to. All of those roles I just mentioned, not just the in-laws. I'm not picking on the in-laws here. Not necessarily all of the time that we assign them that label, but just the times when they go off script, right? Just those times, just the times when they say something that just doesn't sit right with us. Then all of a sudden, boom, you know? Now, when my friend all of those years ago would ask me how my movie was, I knew exactly what she was talking about in a much more nuanced way of asking how your day is going. One with deeper meaning and acknowledgement that that's truly how we are viewing life. But at the time I was looking at it more of the context of just taking in all of the scenes going on around me. As I just said, it was like a more of a how was your day kind of thing in a much more nuanced way. But in taking in the scenes around me, for example, well, that meeting didn't end well because so-and-so walked out. Why does she have to be such a bitch? I had plenty of thoughts about all the ways in which other people's behaviors were impacting me. I had essentially typecast myself into that victim role. Though I would argue all day long about how wrong you were if you had told me that. In fact, I'm pretty sure that I have. I thought if everyone else around me would just follow the script that I had outlined in my mind, then everything would be rainbows and unicorns, and I would live happily ever after with my tiara. That's how I used to think my movie should go. It should go. Always a happy ending for every scene along the way. But now I know better. Now I know that I have far more control. I'm not watching the movie. I am directing it, producing it, all of that because it's all playing out in my own brain. Oh my gosh, knowing this is so, so powerful. I know this may be a little deep. It may be a little difficult to take in. So I really, really want you to think about all of it. I want you to sit with it and I want you to try it out. Try plugging something into that model format. A circumstance, the thought, the feeling, the action, the result, and go in that order. Play it out. The next time you get upset about something, plug it in. See what happens. You really have to look at it, though, as if you are the watcher of the movie and you are the critic, if you will. You know, it's like you have to step outside of owning that. You have to take your own emotions out of it and just look at it and say, I don't know about that scene, right? Look at it like that. Give it a try. It's going to take a lot of practice, but I just want you to know about it and I want you to visualize it as we continue to talk about this going forward. So when I talk about the model and when I talk about the C line and the T line, because they're very difficult sometimes to pull yourself out of and be neutral about it, pick out the neutral part versus your thought. I mean, that's some of the hardest work of all, you all. That takes practice. Practice, practice. What do we get from practice? Wisdom. Oh, sounds like it's time for another Rumi quote. Here's one. I love it, love it, love it. Yesterday, I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today, I am wise, so I am changing myself. Love it. So knowing this and having the awareness that you have far more control over your movie, that is your experience in this life, your life experience, you have more control than you may have previously understood. Just knowing this is going to set you free. And now I ask you to consider the question with this new perspective. How is your movie? If you would like to know more or set up a one-on-one session, head over to my website at sunnythelifecoach.com. I will talk to you next week. Shine on.